The Battle of Saint-Mihiel was a World War I battle fought from 12 to 15 September 1918, involving the American Expeditionary Forces and 110,000 French troops under the command of General John J. Pershing of the United States against German positions. The United States Army Air Service played a significant role in this action. This battle marked the first use of the terms D-Day and H-Hour by the Americans. The fighting was depicted in the 1927 film Wings. The attack at the Saint-Mihiel salient was part of a plan by Pershing in which he hoped that the United States would break through the German lines and capture the fortified city of Metz. It was one of the first offensives launched solely by the United States in World War I, and the attack caught the Germans in the process of retreating. This meant that their artillery was out of place, and the American attack, coming up against disorganized German forces, proved more successful than expected. The Saint-Mihiel attack increased the stature of the U.S. Army in the eyes of the French and British forces, and again demonstrated the critical role of artillery during World War I and the difficulty of supplying such massive armies while they were on the move. The U.S. attack faltered as artillery and food supplies were left behind on the muddy roads. The attack on Metz was not realized, as the Germans refortified their positions and the Americans then turned their efforts to the Meuse-Argonne offensive. Background: the Saint-Mihiel salient. Saint-Mihiel is a town in the Meuse department in northeastern France. Since the end of the 1870–71 Franco-Prussian War, the town was no longer considered important strategically and military installations were not developed. This changed early in World War I with the town inside the battlefront. In 1914, the German command wished to take the Verdun fortifications, which formed a strong point in the French lines. A first attempt, at Bois-le-Préteur, failed despite violent fighting. During two more attempts, German troops took Saint-Mihiel and the fort at Camp des Romains, but they were ultimately stopped at the Fort de Troyes to the south of Verdun. During the course of the war, the front did not change much in this area. Saint-Mihiel formed a salient inside the French lines, blocking communications between Nancy and Verdun. The area near Saint-Mihiel would know much fighting. The Crête des Eparges. February–April 1915. The Bois d'Allie and the Tranchée de la Soif. Isolated behind German lines, Commander D'André's men fight 3 days without food or water before surrender in May 1915. Bois Brûlé. Many casualties when German conqueror Redoubt on December 1914. It is here that the sub-officer Jacques Péricard pronounced the famous words, "Débout les morts," on 8 April 1915. The Forêt de Prémont, the Tête Vache trenches, Colonne trenches. But despite French attacks, the German forces were able to retain this strategic location until the last months of the war. Prelude. General John Pershing thought that a successful Allied attack in the region of Saint-Mihiel, Metz, and Verdun would have a significant effect on the German army. General Pershing was also aware that the area's terrain setting first dictated that the restricted rail and road communications into Verdun be cleared, and that a continuation of the attack to capture the German railroad center at Metz would be devastating to the Germans. After these goals were accomplished, the Americans could launch offensives into Germany proper. The American First Army had been activated in August and taken over the sector of the Allied line. Pershing had to persuade Marshal Foch to permit an American attack on the salient. Weather reports: the Weather Corps of Corps Operation Order stated, visibility, heavy driving wind and rain during parts of day and night. Roads very muddy. This would pose a challenge to the Americans when the order to advance was given. In some parts of the road, the men were almost knee-deep in mud and water. After 5 days of rain, the ground was nearly impassable to both the American tanks and infantry. Many of the tanks were wrecked with water leakage into the engine, while others would get stuck in mud flows. Some of the infantrymen developed early stages of trench foot, even before the trenches were dug. German defensive positions. Prior to the American operation, the Germans installed many in-depth series of trenches, wire obstacles, and machine gun nests. The battlefield's terrain included the nearby premises of three villages, Vignoles, Thiaucourt, and Hanonville-sous-les-Côtes. Their capture would accelerate the envelopment of the German divisions near Saint-Mihiel. The American forces planned to breach the trenches and then advance along the enemy's logistical road network. The Germans knew many details about the Allied offensive campaign coming against them. One Swiss newspaper had published the date, time, and duration of the preparatory barrage. However, the German army stationed in the area of Saint-Mihiel lacked sufficient manpower, firepower and effective leadership to launch a counter-attack of its own against the Allies. With Allied offensives to the north, the Germans decided to pull out of the Saint-Mihiel salient and consolidate their forces near the Hindenburg Line. The order to evacuate the area was given on the 8th of September. The Allied forces discovered the information on a written order to Army Group Galwitz. Allied tank support. Although the AEF was new to the French theatre of war, they trained hard for several months in preparation for fighting against the German armies. The use by the British of tanks at the Battle of Cambrai in 1917 impressed General Pershing so much that he ordered the creation of a tank force to support the AEF's infantry. As a result, by September 1918, Colonel George S. Patton, Jr. had finished training two tank battalions, 144 French-built Renault FT light tanks organized as the 344th and 345th Battalions of the United States Tank Corps, at Langres, France, for an upcoming offensive at the Saint-Mihiel salient. In addition to the AEF tanks, the attack was supported by a further 275 French tanks of the French 1st Assault Artillery Brigade, a total of 419 tanks. Battle. The Saint-Mihiel offensive began on the 12th of September with a threefold assault on the salient. The main attack was made against the south face by two American corps. On the right was the 1st Corps covering a front from Pont-à-Mousson on the Moselle west toward Ligny. On the left, the 4th Corps extending along a front from Ligny west toward Malvoisin. A secondary thrust was carried out against the west face along the heights of the Meuse, from Moulins north to Haudimont, by the 5th Corps. A holding attack against the apex, to keep the enemy in the salient, was made by the French 2nd Colonial Corps. In 1st Army Reserve were the American 35th, 80th, and 91st Divisions. The Allies also mobilized 1,481 aircraft to provide air superiority and close air support over the front. About 40% were American-flown in American units. The remainder were British, French, and Italian. The British contribution, 9 bomber squadrons of the RAF, although provided for the battle, were not under Pershing's operational control. Defending the salient was German Army Detachment C, consisting of 8 divisions and a brigade in the line and about 2 divisions in reserve. The Germans, now desperately short of manpower, had begun a step-by-step withdrawal from the salient only the day before the offensive began. The attack went so well on the 12th of September that Pershing ordered a speed-up in the offensive. By the morning of the 13th of September, the 1st Division, advancing from the east, joined up with the 26th Division, moving in from the west, and before evening all objectives in the salient had been captured. At this point, Pershing halted further advances so that American units could be withdrawn for the coming Meuse-Argonne offensive. Order of Battle 1st Army, the 12th of September 1918. Section Source: OAFH 1st Army, Gen. John J. Pershing 1st Corps, Marge Gen. Hunter Liggett Headquarters Observation Group 2nd Balloon Company 5th Balloon Company 82nd Division, Marge Gen. William P. Burnham 50th Aero Squadron 42nd Balloon Company 90th Division, Maj. Gen. Henry T. Allen 50th Aero Squadron 42nd Balloon Company, Maj. Gen. James H. McRae 4th Corps, Maj. Gen. Joseph T. Dickman Headquarters Observation Group 69th Balloon Company 89th Division, Maj. Gen. William M. Wright 135th Aero Squadron 43rd Balloon Company 42nd Division, Maj. Gen. Charles T. Menaher 90th Aero Squadron 3rd Balloon Company 1st Division, Maj. Gen. Charles P. Summerall 8th Aero Squadron 9th Balloon Company 3rd Division, Maj. Gen. Beaumont B. Buck 5th Corps, Maj. Gen. George H. Cameron Headquarters Observation Group 99th Aero Squadron 7th Balloon Company 26th Division, Maj. Gen. Clarence R. Edwards 88th Aero Squadron 104th Aero Squadron 6th Balloon Company 15th Colonial Division 8th Balloon Company 4th Division, Maj. Gen. John L. Hines 8th Brigade 4th Field Artillery Brigade Remainder of DIV in Reserve 12th Balloon Company, U.S. Army Reserve 35th Division, Maj. Gen. Peter E. Traub 80th Division, Maj. Gen. Edelbert Cronkite 91st Division, Maj. Gen. William H. Johnston. Aftermath. General Pershing's operational planning of Saint-Mihiel separated the salient into several sectors. Each corps had an assigned sector, by boundaries, that it could operate within. The American 5th Corps location was at the northwestern vertices, the 2nd French Colonial Corps at the southern apex, and the American 4th and 1st Corps at the southeastern vertices of the salient. Furthermore, General Pershing's intent was obvious, to envelope the salient by using the main enveloping thrusts of the attack against the weak vertices. The remaining forces would then advance on a broad front toward Metz. This pincer action, by the 4th and 5th Corps, was to drive the attack into the salient and to link the friendly forces at the French village of Épinal, while the 2nd French Colonial Corps kept the remaining Germans tied down. One reason for the American forces' success at Saint-Mihiel was General Pershing's thoroughly detailed operations order. Pershing's operation included detailed plans for penetrating the Germans' trenches, using a combined arms approach to warfare. His plan had tanks supporting the advancing infantry, with 2 tank companies interspersed into a depth of at least 3 lines, and a 3rd tank company in reserve. The result of the detailed planning was an almost unopposed assault into the salient. The American 1st Corps reached its first day's objective before noon, and the second day's objective by late afternoon of the 2nd. Another reason for the American success was the audacity of the small unit commanders on the battlefield. Unlike other officers that commanded their soldiers from the rear, Colonel Patton and his subordinates would lead their men from the front lines. They believed that a commander's personal control of the situation would help ease the chaos of the battlefield. British and French observers were concerned that General Pershing would believe that the American approach was completely vindicated and that the U.S. had nothing more to learn about the Western Front.